straight up to the witness stand on the left and remain standing and raise your right hand.
Good morning, sir. Do you swear the testimony you're to give in this proceeding is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under the pains and penalties of perjury?
I do.
If you come in and have a seat and state your full name and spell your last name for the record.
Good morning. My name is Jason Brewer. Last name is spelled B-R-E-W-E-R.
Would you please introduce yourself to the jurors by telling them where you work?
I work at the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
And what is your current assignment with the FBI laboratory?
My current assignment is a forensic chemist examiner in the chemistry unit.
Can you describe for the jurors what is a forensic chemist in the chemistry unit?
So a forensic chemist is someone who analyzes items of evidence when there may be a question about the chemical nature of the item of evidence. It could be anything, for example, controlled substances, what's known as bank dye analysis. We do lubricant analysis. We might analyze inks, pharmaceutical products, product tampering if a chemical may have been added. And we also do what's called general unknown testing, which is basically like, what is this stuff?
You said a general testing of maybe like unknown substances as well?
Yes, we call it general unknown testing.
And can you describe for the jurors what is your role or what types of duties do you have as a forensic chemist at the FBI laboratory?
So as a forensic chemist, I will receive items of evidence. I'll inventory those items. I will then determine how best to go about analyzing those items to answer the question that may have been asked. I will then summarize my results into a packet of notes and a laboratory report. And then when requested, I'll testify to those results.
Approximately how long have you worked for the FBI laboratory?
Almost 19 years now.
Is the FBI laboratory an accredited laboratory?
Yes, it is.
And can you describe for the jurors what it means to be an accredited laboratory?
So in the context of a forensic laboratory, accreditation means that the laboratory has hired an external independent body to come into the laboratory and completely assess our management system, our facilities, and our operating procedures against a set of very specific requirements. They come in and do that assessment, and if the laboratory is able to demonstrate that they meet all the requirements and the facilities are up to the standards, then they receive the accreditation from that entity.
Now, you mentioned that you're assigned to the chemistry unit. What is the chemistry unit?
So the chemistry unit is in the scientific analysis section of the laboratory division, and we have a number of disciplines within the chemistry unit. The discipline I am in is called general chemistry. So we analyze, like I talked about earlier, drugs, unknown items, lubricants, inks, things of that sort. But we also have other disciplines such as metallurgy, toxicology, paints and polymers exams, and fire debris analysis.
Have you had other roles within the laboratory, or have you always been a chemist?
So I started off as my job title was forensic chemist, and then I was promoted to my current position of forensic examiner chemist.
Can you explain what the difference is between those roles?
So a chemist will do a lot of the duties I talked about earlier. They'll receive evidence, they can inventory evidence, and conduct analyses. However, they do not draw interpretations and issue laboratory reports. That next step is handled by the examiner, the forensic examiner.
For about how long have you been performing forensic examinations at the FBI laboratory?
Approximately 15 or 16 years.
And can you describe what your educational background is?
Yes, I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from James Madison University, which is in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I have a PhD degree in chemistry from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill.
Are you a member of any professional organizations?
Yes, I am a member of SWIG Drug, which is a scientific working group for the analysis of seized drugs.
And can you describe some of your professional experience in conducting forensic examinations on items of evidence that are submitted to the FBI laboratory?
That is my primary duty, and I've been doing that for almost 19 years now. So I receive items of evidence. Based on the context provided, I will then develop an examination plan utilizing our instruments and our techniques to arrive at a conclusion on the chemical nature of the items.
In your approximately 19 years at the FBI laboratory, about how many, if you had to estimate, forensic examinations have you conducted?
Thousands.
In your role at the FBI laboratory, do you engage in continuing education?
Yes, I do.
And how often?
Each year, we're required to do, I believe it's a minimum of 15 hours, but I far exceed that each year.
Have you ever been qualified before as an expert to testify in courts of law?
Yes,
In what field?
in forensic chemistry.
Your Honor, at this time, the state moves under Rule of Evidence 702 to qualify Dr. Brewer as an expert in the field of forensic chemistry.
Okay. Dr. Brewer may give his opinions.
Thank you, Judge. Dr. Brewer, I want to address your attention to the matter that brings you before the court today. In May of 2022, were you requested to perform a forensic analysis of evidence in laboratory number 2022-01033-2?
Yes.
And what were you requested to do in connection with that case?
There was an unknown substance on a leaf that was submitted, and the request was to attempt to identify the unknown substance.
You said an unknown substance on a leaf
Yes.
that was submitted. Now, before we discuss the specifics of your analysis, can you describe for the jurors what is the process generally when evidence is submitted to the FBI laboratory? How does evidence get received?
So we recommend that evidence be shipped by an overnight carrier with a tracking number, and then that evidence is received by a unit called the Evidence Management Unit in the building. They intake the evidence and review the paperwork that we required to be submitted with the evidence. They start the chain of custody for the evidence within the FBI laboratory, and then they disseminate the evidence to the units that need to receive it.
What steps are taken to secure and track the evidence once it's received by the FBI laboratory?
So the evidence receives a unique laboratory number, which in this case was 2022-01033. That goes into our laboratory information management system, which is an electronic chain of custody tracking system. From that point forward, every transfer of evidence is recorded within that system, and the evidence is secured within an evidence room throughout the entirety of the evidence being within the building.
In this particular case, was an item of evidence sent to the FBI laboratory through the process that you described by Concord Police Department?
Yes.
And as a part of your analysis, I believe that you testified that you often perform an analysis and then generate a report. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did you prepare a report in this case?
Yes, I did.
Dr. Brewer, I'm showing you states 40 for identification. If you want to take a look at that document, let me know if you recognize it.
Yes, I recognize it. This is a report I issued.
Okay. And if at any point you need to refer to the report, please just let me know so that the record can be clear that you're referring to something.
Understood.
Now, in this case, what item did you analyze? What item of evidence?
I analyzed a leaf with unknown substance. When I received it, there was a leaf and loose debris within a paper bag.
And what did you do with that item when you received it?
So I'm the one that inventoried the evidence, so I created an item number for the leaf, and then I collected all of the loose debris and created an item number for that loose debris.
What initial steps did you take to ensure that the evidence was properly sealed prior to you taking those steps?
So the first thing we do is called evidence breakdown or evidence inventory. So when I'm inventorying that evidence, I'm taking note of any anomalies and or if it's properly sealed. And in this instance, everything was properly sealed and there was nothing significant to report as far as the nature of the evidence.
So once you ensure that the evidence was properly sealed and you start looking at it to determine how you're going to analyze it, can you describe for the jurors what steps you take next?
To begin the analysis,
Yes.
the first thing I'm doing, this was a general unknown, so one of the most important steps is just to visually examine it and see what I'm dealing with. And in this case, I had a white powder to analyze. So the next step that I did in this case was what's known as pH testing to determine whether it's an alkaline substance or a acidic substance. I'm using just simple pH strips that change color upon exposure to a substance.
What do you do after a pH test?
So the next thing I did, since it's a white powder, the next technique I use is called infrared spectroscopy. This is a technique that will provide a lot of information and doesn't take very much time to conduct.
And can you just describe generally what that instrument is?
So an infrared spectrometer uses what's known as infrared light, so just to the lower energy side of red light in the visible spectrum. Chemicals consist of chemical bonds that are constantly vibrating and rotating and moving at room temperature. And the frequencies of those movements will interact with infrared light. And so as you pass infrared light across a wide spectrum through that material, it will either absorb or transmit that light. And it provides a trace of which frequencies absorbed and which frequencies transmitted. And from that information, you can determine some of the chemical properties of the material.
And once you do that testing, what do you do after that?
So in a general unknown analysis, it's sort of a step-by-step. So that particular test provided me information that then led me to decide to do the next technique in my exam plan for this case, which was X-ray diffractometry.
And can you explain for the jurors what that is?
So X-ray diffractometry probes the crystal structure of a solid material. So X-rays are directed onto the material, and based on the arrangement of the building blocks, almost like a set of Legos, the X-rays will scatter off of that material, and the particular wavelength and angle of the X-ray that scatters and provides a response can provide information about the crystal structure of that material.
And once you had that information, what did you do next?
So the final technique I did after that was called scanning electron microscopy with energy dispersive X-ray spectrometry, or SEM-EDS.
Can you explain for the jurors what that is?
So this technique shines an electron beam on a material. That causes some interactions in the material, which will then emit photons. Those photons that are emitted are characteristic or contain a specific energy related to the element that generated that X-ray or that photon. So we measure the energies of the photons coming off the material, and that will tell us which elements are present in the material.
And the item that you analyzed in this case, did it have an evidence number that you used to refer to it as?
Yes, as I indicated a little earlier, I created 2 items of evidence for this item that was submitted.
And what were those evidence numbers?
So the leaf was denoted item 1, and then the debris I recovered that was loose in the paper bag, I denoted as item 2.
And when you received it from Concord Police Department, did it have any property identifying numbers on it?
It did.
And what was that?
I'd have to refer to the report.
If you need to refresh your memory with your report, please read it to yourself and then look up and let me know when you're done.
I'm done.
Did that help refresh your memory as to what that number was that was assigned to it from Concord Police Department?
Yes, at least one of the numbers was 79-2. There may be other numbers associated, but I'd have to look into my notes
And was that associated with the leaf debris that you were describing?
Yes, it was just one item, so the leaf with debris.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Now, once you had gone through the various testing of the leaf debris, were you able to reach an ultimate conclusion as to what that unknown substance was?
Yes, I was.
And based on your opinion, what was that white unknown substance?
So my result was specifically that sodium bicarbonate was identified within the item 2 debris.
And what is sodium bicarbonate?
Sodium bicarbonate is commonly referred to as baking soda.
So once you determined that the white substance was baking soda, what did you do next?
So I wrote up my results into a laboratory report of examination and submitted that report to my peer reviewer.
What is peer review?
So our first level of review is called a technical review. What that consists of is I provide the laboratory report and my entire notes packet and all my data to another person qualified in the same discipline. And that person goes through the through the notes and the data and determines whether or not the correct exams were conducted, the conclusions are supported by those exams, and that the laboratory report accurately captures the conclusions.
And did the review process that you just described, did that happen in this case?
Yes.
So once you've completed your forensic examination, you've documented your results in a report, and it's gone through the peer review process, what happens with the evidence?
One thing to add is there's a second layer of review after the peer review, and that's an administrative review by my supervisor, the unit chief of someone assigned to do the administrative review. And it's a higher level review looking that, the evidence was treated properly, the report meets all requirements, and all the documentation is present.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. So there's a peer review and then an administrative review.
Yes.
So essentially two steps of a review process?
Correct.
Okay. So once you've completed your forensic examination, you've documented your results in a report, it's gone through that two-step review process, what happens next?
So first, I will issue the examination to the contributor. In this case, I believe it was Detective Murray. And then I will prepare the evidence for return to the contributor.
And did you do that in this case? Did you return the evidence to Concord Police Department?
Yes, I did.
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Dr. Brewer.
Good morning.
You testified that you did, I think you called it general unknown testing. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But that's not 100% accurate in terms of the information that you had. No?
What's the question?
You had more information than we just don't know what this is.
Generally, a contributor will reach out and ask if we can test something and provide some details.
Okay, and in this particular situation, that did happen, and you were,
What? Yeah, absolutely. You having a hard time getting the record? Or having a hard time with the record? Or? Okay.
I apologize.
No problem.
Thank you, Counsel.
Thank you.
Okay, so in this particular case, someone did in fact reach out to you.
Yes.
And what you were asked to do was to test this substance to see if it was a very specific thing.
That will often happen, but that's not the approach that we take when we conduct our analysis.
Okay, but you were told that what the police were looking for was to find out whether this substance was either lye or lime.
Yes, that was the original request.
Okay, and so that, you had that piece of information along with some other smaller details when you went to go do your testing.
pretty much I received a leaf with debris, and original communications were, can that be tested for lye or lime? In which case I said we would just treat it as a general unknown to determine what it is.
Okay. And so you did your testing, and I understand that it's sodium bicarbonate, and you testified, I think, about four different tests that you did. There's the pH, the thing with the laser. I have to apologize. Chemistry was not my best subject in school. But so you conducted several tests on it.
Yes.
And these tests, they're not really subjective, right?
No.
No, they're not subjective. So you shine the laser beam on it and it either absorbs the light or it doesn't.
Very generally speaking, yes.
That's all I can handle. So again, they're not objective. They're not subjective tests. Like, you're doing the tests and you're getting an answer.
It's not that simple, but the tests themselves are objective.
Okay. And so you test them and it comes back as sodium bicarbonate. Yes?
Yes.
And sodium bicarbonate, you said, is known as baking soda.
Correct.
All right. And what exactly is baking soda?
Baking soda has a variety of uses. You can buy it commercially. You can use it for baking, for increasing the pH of items, various household utilities.
Okay. And so you can use baking soda. I think you said baking, so different cooking type things, right?
Yes.
You can use it to unclog your drain if you had some vinegar in, right? I do it.
Maybe.
All right. You can put it in your refrigerator to help keep your refrigerator fresh.
It supposedly can absorb odors.
All right. So some people might put it in their gym bag to absorb odors there.
Possibly.
Approximately how many different uses does baking soda have?
I'm not aware of how many specific number of uses, but quite a few.
Okay. And you testified that this is something that's commercially available?
Yes.
And so you can go into a lot of different stores and buy baking soda.
Correct.
And baking soda isn't like, I don't know, like a detergent where you might go and buy one brand and it might be chemically different than another brand.
Baking soda is, by definition, 100% sodium bicarbonate.
Okay. You testified about this process that you have to make sure, sort of to keep things accurate, to make sure that everyone in your lab is sort of doing their job, right? They're not making mistakes, they're interpreting the data they receive correctly.
Sorry, which part are you talking about?
So having someone review your work,
Okay, yes, the technical review.
the technical review, and then you said there's an administrative review.
Correct.
Right? And so that is to make sure that you are interpreting the data correctly.
Yes.
All right. And again, figuring out the chemical compound of something is pretty objective.
Yes.
Are you familiar with confirmation bias?
Yes.
Can you explain to the jury what confirmation bias is?
Generally, it would just be if someone proposed that a particular item or result was one way, then you might be biased to directing the results to achieve that result.
All right, but again, because your review of the chemical nature of the white powder was objective, you would agree that you are less likely to be affected by something like confirmation bias.
Correct.
I have no further questions.
Any further direct examination?
No, Judge. I'd ask that he be excused.
Any objection to excusing Dr. Brewer?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Doctor, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the state prepared to call its next witness?
We are, Judge. Your Honor, this